Before we begin, just a word of warning, this review contains spoilers. Greta Gerwig's Barbie excels on several fronts. For one, it takes a look at traditional gender norms and helps young girls who might have played with Barbie dolls growing up realize the extent to which a supposedly benign toy has affected their view of themselves and of women in society, and how that view may have limited them in realizing their potential. The film is also a critique of unfettered capitalism, whose biggest proponents, large corporations, will gladly peddle dreams of supposed personal fulfillment to young girls in the form of a doll who is all about looks, vanity, the shallow and the superficial, for the sake of the bottom line. For the remainder of this article, I'll refer to these corporations as the capitalists. While the entire film will leave you laughing out loud, it's the first half of the film that is especially hilarious. In one scene, when asked what Ken really does as a job, he replies that he, quote, does beach, that he is, quote, beaching. Visually, the film is stunning. The set design, resplendent with color, chief among them being pink, obviously, is gorgeous. Attention to detail in costumes is astounding. The pacing of the story is brisk, the script is tight, well executed, and not a second is wasted on the superfluous. The dialogues are witty, well thought out, and take a dig at the absurdity of traditional societal gender norms, and the capitalists who encourage them, either directly or tacitly. I wouldn't be surprised if Barbie garners many accolades at the various film festivals and award functions, if it hasn't already. Nevertheless, I have two gripes with the film, both of which I shall address in turn. First, the people and institutions that benefited from this gender stereotyping, namely the capitalists, seem to be let off, in my opinion, too easily. For instance, towards the end of the film, when the teenage girl, Sasha, suggests making a more relatable Barbie doll, who's just your average woman, a regular Barbie doll, if you will, the capitalists jump on yet another opportunity to make money. If I were to let my imagination run wild for just a moment here, a better ending would have perhaps been for the now awakened Barbies and Kens to band together and chase the executives from Mattel out of Barbie Land as a show of solidarity against their common enemy, a corporation that for decades perpetuated gender stereotypes and boxed both Barbies and Kens into rigid roles, all for the sake of the almighty dollar. Look, I'm not a writer or a director, but the point I'm trying to make is this. In spite of several hard-hitting and precise jabs at the capitalist class, the film, I feel, didn't go far enough in antagonizing them. I think it went a little too soft on them, at least for my liking. Second, the film tends to, perhaps inadvertently, perhaps by design, encourage an adversarial relationship between the two sexes. Let me explain. America Ferrera's character is shown in the movie as the breadwinner of the family. Ostensibly, she's the one with a job, whereas her husband is simply sitting on the sofa at home, learning a foreign language through an app on his smartphone. Now, even if this characterization is not intentional, that's at least how it comes across to the audience. This, in my opinion, was a lost opportunity. By perhaps showing a man who might have also been gainfully employed and contributing monetarily to the family, the film could have shown that both parents are equal partners in the successful running of the household and raising of their child. Instead, the husband is reduced to a caricature, a cartoonish sidekick to his wife. Now, I do understand that this is a comedy film, and films of this genre tend to caricaturize one or more of its characters, if only to add to the comedic element. However, for a film that is just as much a comedy as it is a social satire, I feel that it overcorrects in the other direction, with the tacit message being that the men have been reduced to being less than the women in the film, as is evident by the movie's marketing tagline, Barbie, she's everything, he's just Ken. Maybe I'm overanalyzing here, but in another example, one of the female characters of the film says to another something along the lines of, when in a romantic relationship with a man, you should at times play the role of their mother, but don't let them think that you're being their mother. To which my mind instinctively went, how about just being an equal in the relationship, respecting your partner, accepting them for who they are, and not patronizing them by thinking that you need to play the role of their mother or father for the relationship to be successful. Men and women are not against one another. In fact, they complement each other. Instead of highlighting the complementarity of the two sexes, the film ends up portraying an antagonistic relationship between the Barbies and the Kens, a tussle in which the Barbies, i.e., the women, eventually come out on top. In short, what starts off as Barbie and Ken ends up becoming Barbie versus Ken. Scott Galloway, professor of marketing at New York University's Stern School of Business, often talks and writes about the state of young men in modern society. The data seems to show that girls are graduating with college degrees in higher numbers than boys, and that boys are falling behind in both high school and college. Boys are not entering into romantic relationships and are effectively checking out of society, retreating into themselves, video games, and Reddit forums. Once in the workforce, women tend to be financially better off than men. Women are also more likely to own a home, and on the list goes. This is not only bad for men, but also for women, as I shall explain momentarily. In what seems to be a capitalistic zero-sum game, with both men and women competing for an ever-shrinking pie of well-paying jobs and opportunities for upward mobility, the upliftment of women in society over the past half-century or so has, to a certain extent, come at the expense of men. Centuries of male control over resources has effectively rendered most women hypergamous, in that women rarely marry down. They marry men from at least the same socioeconomic status as their own, if not higher. So if women still want to marry in the future, which I believe most women do, they will have to contend with a dating pool comprised of men who may well be from a lower socioeconomic level than their own. This new unequal society negatively affects not just men, but also women, for it is in the direct interest of women that the men in their lives, husbands, fathers, brothers, etc., be strong, independent, and meaningful contributors to the relationship. Conclusion. Directorially, Barbie might just be Gerwig's best work yet. In her portrayal of stereotypical Barbie, Margot Robbie has outdone herself. Not only does she look the part, but she also superbly portrays the existential crisis that her character goes through. In fact, the entire cast has done a terrific job playing their respective roles. Everyone from Ryan Gosling to Kate McKinnon to Will Ferrell. There are several noteworthy moments in the movie. America Ferrera's part monologue, part outburst is one of its defining moments, in which she talks about the often contradictory roles that women are expected to play in contemporary society. In another instance, when stereotypical Barbie mentions that she would like to speak to the lady at the helm of the organization that created Barbie dolls, someone who is in charge, as it were, she is greeted by a swarm of C-suite executives, everyone from the CEO to the CFO to the COO, all of whom are men. In terms of its messaging, Barbie gets a lot right, but it also gets a few things wrong. And that explains my conflicting position. While on the one hand I do think that every young girl or woman should watch the film, I also fear that some of them might get the wrong message as it relates to their relationship to the opposite sex. Regardless of your opinion, one thing's for sure, Barbie will remain one of the most culturally significant works of cinema for years to come.